T-shirt. Yeah. So, and what's your T-shirt tonight?
Mine is just a collection of, you got Patty, you
Oh,
got
nice.
yeah. So it's UFO,
Yeah.
Wife had
None
got
of
that for
which
me for
has
Christmas.
anything to do with tonight.
No, just
And
a random collection of, possibilities that might be out there.
yeah, there you go. I did a 2-hour interview with a journalist today in Oklahoma. I presented on the paranormal as part of what I did at the Tulsa Road Fest, and she contacted me. We talked a little bit at the thing, but we talked for 2 hours today about that random collection of
Yeah,
ufology and where does ufology, and
the
so it's cool.
Oklahoma
It'll be
octopus.
interesting to see the
Did that one come up? The
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma octopus. Yeah, that's one of those weird cryptids.
That did not come up in those 2 hours. So why don't we just roll the opening and then we'll come back
Yes,
and we'll
got it.
settle right in. So here we go. Welcome, guys. This is episode 216 of the Into the Outer Realms project, but way more importantly, 41 of the
What?
siege at Waco will be our sinister mystery tonight.
Yes.
So let's go to our branding and roll the opening. Here we go. There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon. The preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts, because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Because, hey, Craig, the president of the United States is giving a press conference tonight, and that is entertainment that we can't hope to compete with. So I really appreciate that everybody's here tonight.
Yeah, it's going to be, just all comments aside, this is going to be, God, this is not going to go good.
I think it's make or break. I guess we'll find out the aftermath, because here we are in 1993.
Yes.
It had to happen, the follow-up to Ruby Ridge, because while that trial was going on, what we're going to talk about tonight was unfolding. And the devil with the blue dress, as you call her, was thrown about halfway into the middle of it, which I wasn't aware of due to some delays and things. We'll get to her, but I have to be upfront with you. Up until yesterday morning, so I do my research as sort of an inverted pyramid, especially on subjects that I haven't been studying for years. And as I was looking at the broad strokes and I was going deeper, I was going, I don't know, this seems really cut and dry, like what's going on here. And then yesterday I hit on some stuff that is very shady, and I think on a meta level will kind of illuminate what was going on with the Clinton administration and the deep state, and how we went, 12 years of Republican, and that's supposed to have a certain vibe, but this was really sort of business as usual, picking up with Clinton and moving forward, from my perspective.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's the thing. Like I was telling you about when I was mentioning this. Like I said, when you look at this thing, there's a lot of stuff where there's definitely something where the government was going to intervene with these people eventually, but it was one of those you can also see, and that's where the sinister part is. And I think this is part where some of the stuff that Joey found. you can see where they're like, this is a spark we need. This is the Bubba effect, because there's a term that was thrown away especially during Obama's term. It's called the Bubba effect. The powers that be in the government, they want to trigger the Bubbas. They want that outrage, so that way it gives us the need to crack down. Which they're already set. We could go all the shows that we've talked about, all the infrastructure that's sitting there. They're just looking for that need to. Unfortunately, you gave us no choice. We have to do this. And now we must crack down. And that's kind of one of the things. There was enough of a spark where it was just like, oops, that was our opportunity, and it went in.
Yeah. And King makes the comment that as time goes on, we hear different things and more information gets out. So we'll try to give you what we know. It was two very complicated worlds meeting, and I think there was only ever going to be one outcome. And Craig, there was a crucial day, and we'll get to it when there's time, where this could have gone very differently. And we hear about this in history, the kind of offers from Japan to kind of, we don't need a bomb dropped on us, like, let's talk, and like, no, we've reached a certain commitment line. And there have been other times in history too where the United States has you talk to some people in the American Revolution, like King George was ready to deal. Like, he didn't want this thing to happen. So you see that again in this one, and that's what really clicked for me. So we'll do kind of the housekeeping of the thing. So who are the Branch Davidians? Well, they're an offshoot of the Davidian Seventh-day Adventist Church, which broke away from the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which most people have heard about, in the 1930s. And the Branch Davidians became a separate group totally from the Seventh-day Adventists in the 1950s. And similar to what some of the things that Randy Weaver and his wife believed in, they believed apocalyptic. And you talk about a biblical apocalyptic, but I just want to say 7 out of 10 people you talk to, if not more today, have sort of an apocalyptic feeling. Not necessarily Bible, not necessarily Seven Seals, not necessarily Revelation, but the feeling that things are going to hell in a handbasket.
Oh, yeah.
And that maybe our best days are behind us as a nation and as a planet and whatnot. And so you can kind of understand that. And they throw in what makes it very biblical is the imminent return of Jesus Christ. So
when you mix in the messianic complex, there's always a recipe for fun.
That's what I was going to say. With the Branch Davidians, they were at a level of apocalyptic where you have prophets and prophetesses, just like in the old days, right? There were people that harbored in the coming of Jesus, and so they're doing that thing. So you want to tell the audience a little about Mr. David Koresh, born Vernon Wayne Howell?
Yeah, we could, because this really gets this. I mean, basically, like I said, he was born, Vernon Wayne Howell. He was born in 1959. His life took a really, you can see the influences, because everybody, when you look at his information, you're like, oh my God, he's into these young girls, stuff. When you realize this is all he knows. His mom was 15, his dad was 20, and so she really doesn't want much to do with David, so he's basically, he ends up being raised because she was, I think, Oh,
I lost Craig for the moment. Hopefully we're going to get him back. I'm not sure what's going on there. So yeah, he got involved with the Branch Davidians. As Craig was saying, single mom, he never knew his dad, never got to know his dad. So there was that thing going on. The absentee father dad. He was heavily bullied in school. He was dyslexic, and he dropped out of high school. So while I'm waiting for Craig to come back on, there's a situation where we did a whole bunch of sinister ministries, and he really fits this profile. There you are, sir.
I took myself off Wi-Fi. I'm not sure what happened. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I was just saying that he never did know his dad, never had a relationship. So his absentee father, he was bullied.
Yeah, he was 20 and she was 14.
Yeah.
It is.
And he, go ahead. Yeah.
No. Like I said, I was just catching, because that was the thing is, their relationship broke up, not too long. I think it was like maybe it wasn't even 2 when they finally called it quits.
Yeah.
And then, she, she ended up with another marriage, and that one was abusive. And so he's gone through this. So for basically the first 5 to 6 years of his life is just, turmoil. I mean, he doesn't really know this. And so basically he didn't really know who his father was until he was 5. He didn't really know the truth about his family, because because Bonnie's mother was the one that ended up raising him. So so it's one of those kind of, almost like true South type things. It's just, you got the, uncle grandpa type thing. You got mom, grandma raising you as mom. And so he ends up going through this. It's so through this part, it's kind of, it's just kind of up and down until he gets to his early teens, about 12. And then he discovers sports and he starts to actually become kind of a popular kid. He realizes, as most people that end up becoming the cult leaders, they find this charismatic side of themselves where they have this draw. People always say, how can people follow these things? Everybody wants to belong to something. And then all of a sudden, there's this draw. And so I'm not sure what's going on with my Wi-Fi, but so it's like I'm pixelating a little bit because I got myself on cell signal. So if I go circle again, it's because I'm going to try to switch back to Wi-Fi again. But that's, so he goes through he's in special education class until he's about 12, like I said. Then he drops out of Garland High School his junior year, and then just does odd jobs. He gets fired or quits all those. And then at 19, and here's where his early comes in, he has a relationship with a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
So this one right here, she becomes pregnant. He at this time, he claims to be a born-again Christian. He goes to Southern Baptist Church, and he then joins the Seventh-day Adventist there. And at that time, the pastor and this girl, and the pastor's daughter, they begin this 2-year relationship. Well, these kind of things start, like him. He then has what he calls a vision. And let's see, I've got it written down here, Isaiah 34:16 in the Bible, it's saying that none should want for her mate. And he takes this as a sign from God, and he approaches the pastor, and at which point that he forbids him from seeing his daughter, ignores, congregation gets wary of this guy, and kicks him out. Well, this starts the move now to where he's part of the Seventh-day Adventists. Well, now he's kind of a little bit disillusioned with the actual main body of the church. And now he finds the Branch Davidians. And now these Branch Davidians, which was this offshoot was started by a man by the name of Benjamin Roden.
Mm-hmm.
And this was in 1978. And so, and I think, and this part of the branch, I think, was founded just 3 or 4 years prior to Koresh's being born. So they've been around for a little while. This wasn't just like a new one. So that's, I can toss it back there while I'm having internet issues here.
There were only a couple of things. He was actually kicked out of the Seventh-day Adventist Church for being a bad influence on the youth. He goes to Hollywood to try to become a rock star, and he fails. So it's these weird parallels with guys like Charlie Manson, who have this charisma, have this God complex, this Messiah complex, want to be creative artists and sort of fail. And you're right. And then he joins the Branch Davidians in Waco. I have in 1981. And at the time, a husband and wife had inherited the leadership from the founder. They were called the Rodens. And he has an affair with Lois. Very interesting. After his pattern of very young girls, he's the young one. He's the May, September. She is, he's 20, 21, and she's 45 years older. She's in her 60s. They even travel over to Israel together. And then after her death, there's a power struggle with her son, George. And David has a bunch of followers by then. The Branch Davidians at the Mount Carmel Center outside of Waco are split. There's a schism. So David takes his people and he goes to East Texas for several years, but then he comes back, dude, and it gets weird and ugly.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, because think about it. It's just like, with this age group, difference. She's got a son, who's not too far old. I don't think he's much older than David Koresh at this time. I think might be in his 30s. I think George Roden, and he was one of those. He felt like he was the heir apparent to Dad's church, and so now here you feel like the heir apparent, but now all of a sudden here's this guy that jumps in, says that he's now with your mom, and says that their love child is to be the chosen one that is going to lead them into. And so now you've got this whole thing. Now you're mad at mom. Now you're mad at this guy who he calls an interloper. And so this is going to set up what is, we'll talk about here in a few minutes, what's going to come down the road, which is actually one of the first signs that there's trouble in Waco.
Yeah, that the Branch Davidians got some stuff going on, right?
Yeah.
You want to say it or shall I?
Well, it's you go for it. I mean, like I said, because it starts with fires and gun and shootouts.
Yeah, it's in 1987. Koresh gets 7 of his followers. They dress in camouflage. They arm themselves to the teeth with rifles, shotguns, and semi-automatics, and they descend on Mount Carmel Center, infiltrate it. There is a firefight, and George Roden is shot in the hands and in the chest. And then it becomes very interesting. Craig, I'm always interested with these cult leaders. They get prosecuted. So many of them do time in jail. They either get out and pick right up again, or they skirt the law, or it's a high percentage of these guys. The 7 guys that were with him were outright acquitted, and his trial was declared a mistrial.
Yeah, so which basically you've got to have that martyrdom. Right. Yeah, it's like the archetype for these messianic characters. You have to have that martyrdom side. That person's either outright killed and becomes the almost the godlike legend, or you have the ones like, see, this is what they're trying to do for me. This is why you must protect me. This is why you must listen to what I'm saying. And it's both. It's like that's that archetype that they all follow this pattern. And this was his, as goes to this trial. You're basically, it's a mistrial. So now you can go back to your group and see, God has chosen me. This is why you must follow me. It fits all the stuff. I mean, you can see all the pieces.
It worked. Yeah, it worked. I mean, it makes me think of Jim Jones. I mean, he skirted the law, moved the people around, made his moves. And then by the time they got to Jonestown, he was, by the time they got to Guyana, he was like, folks, we got to arm. We got to be ready. They're coming at us. And of course, eventually they do. So, if you're stocking arms and you're barricading, they are eventually going to come for you. That's their nature. So you're a prophet with a guaranteed outcome that you're creating, right? So, and we've seen that with those two. So by 1990, he is firmly entrenched as the leader of the Branch Davidians. At this time, he takes the name David Koresh. David for House of David. He is the inheritor of the House of David. Again, direct line to Jesus. And Koresh, which is another name for Cyrus, who, of course, released the Israelites from Babylon. So now we're talking about being in captivity, and the whole world is against us, and they're trying to annihilate us. He is really setting up 3 years prior. He's really setting up this apocalyptic formula.
And that's kind of a perfect thing. I forgot to mention this part because it was May 15th, 1992 is when he legally changes his name to David Koresh from Vernon Wayne, Howell. And the reason he chose this was obviously David, linked to King David and, the descendants, of this line. And the Koresh is the biblical name of Cyrus the Great, who was the one that freed the Jews in Babylon.
Yeah.
And so now he's this, David Koresh. So now he's literally setting up this messianic complex.
Like, are we cutting in and out our audio?
It could be. Like I said, it might be my.
Are you losing us? Yeah, no, because I had just said the bit about David and Koresh, and right before you did. So just bear with us, audience. We're having a little bit of technicality tonight, but this is where he really starts to impose himself, because he's. Oh, I think
I think I
How about now?
think Craig
How about now?
froze again. Oh,
How
there
about
you
now?
are. Oh, yeah, I think you froze again for a second. I was just going to say this is where he really starts to impose his messianic, sinister minister shtick, right? So a strict lifestyle, rigorous Bible study, adherence to his teachings. That's a big difference, Craig, with Randy Weaver. They were apocalyptic. They were doing Bible study, but they were following the Bible, right? Randy Weaver didn't have like all these people around him and all that. I'm going to lay down what I found out, and then you let me know what you've heard, because there seems to be contradictions about things. So here's what I found: that he did practice polygamy. Some of his wives were underage. Another member of the group who later came out and talked, because there were some survivors, the youngest was 10 years old that he married, and that God was directing him to do this. And you already kind of spoke to the setup of that, of when he was a youth, that was implanted.
Yeah.
Women were restricted in their diet, no dairy whatsoever, flour, eggs, none of that kind of stuff, no makeup or jewelry. And then there were allegations of child abuse. Now, even some of the articles who were sort of on the side of the feds talk about allegations of child abuse, maybe that were never proven. But again, former members of the Branch Davidians talked about kids were often hit. A kid as young as 8 months old was hit with a wooden paddle until she bled. He made one of his own sons bleed. And that there was sexual exploitation under his leadership, which is kind of redundant because, he's marrying underage girls and certainly sleeping with them. There was also this communal parenting, and Tanya and I have watched some documentaries about other cults where the cult leader dissolves marriages. He says, you two are no longer married. You're not allowed to have sex anymore. All the girls are basically mine, or in some cases, they'll pair people up strategically the way they want him to. So he basically says that all of the women are basically for him because he's the pathway to God. This is very right, Rasputin and some of these other guys. So that's what I got as far as before we get into the guns and the paramilitary stuff. Did you get anything different than that?
No, it's pretty close because, like I said, the doctrine, this is one of the doctrines he came up with, is that it had to be, he needed to have what they call, it's a weird way to phrase it, and there needed to be the production of 24 children. And so, because these were going to be the 24 ruling elders. And so this is one of those, it's kind of like what you said, that most of these guys, they end up going, it's going to be kind of crass, but the way it is like, the only way to salvation is through the holy penis, and that is mine. Yeah. That's the only way. It's like, that's what they do. It is just, it never, like you said, they dissolve marriages, they bring all this thing, and it all happens to be that they become basically concubines to the leader. And it's almost like the way back in the early, where the term is where the king had first right of sleeping with the wife.
Oh yeah, first night or crystal knocked or whatever.
Yeah, that's it's basically, it's almost like these guys have this thing where she's mine first, and then if I so choose, you can have. I'll see if I share.
Yeah,
it's just
it is. Biden so far has called Zelensky President Putin 2 times.
Oh Lord!
So it ain't looking good. That's a big mess up. So thank you for reporting in.
Yes.
Yeah, so first night, some elite biker gangs, like the leader of the biker gang, can have any girl he wants. No argument if she's your girlfriend, if she's your wife, anything. So and it makes me think of NXIVM, right? Yeah. Where he had that concubine level where concubines train concubines. And the child abuse thing with the paddles and all came from his own people. That wasn't government propaganda. So there's a lot going on. And then they're stockpiling weapons, and there are whispers or rumors of paramilitary training. Yeah,
because like the abuse part, a couple of things I found. It's like, one, there was some credible ones, like people that, some of the ex-members of this stuff said, yes, there was abuse, things. But there's other ones that said, one person, it's kind of like now where somebody sees a kid being spanked, some people say that's abuse, and then other ones are like, no, it's discipline. And that, so there's also the other part that said, no, what these people were calling abuse was just a kid being spanked, for not doing something right. But unfortunately, we're in the era where there's not film. So, there's no way to really know, but you take some of the credit, like the bruise, you see some of these things. Yes, but you don't, the fortunate part is, one, it's some of these cases where he said, there was no real hard evidence because the doctor wasn't involved.
Right.
But that's what I found were the competing points on that part with the abuse side.
Right. So I don't often do this, but I'm going to ask you a question. So one of his ex-wives, and he only had one legal wife, Rachel Koresh, and he only had one legal son who he named Cyrus, right, after the Persian king,
Yes.
setting up this line of ascension, right? But here's my question for you. An ex-wife of his, polygamy, and some of the other people came out and said he had this wooden paddle. He hit these kids till they bled. If they were lying, what's the motivation? To just distance themselves from something that was very ugly?
That was one of the things, yeah, because some of the stuff we're saying, that they felt like some of the motivation of these people was because they wanted to make sure that they distanced themselves so far to where nobody looked as like you were involved in this. It helps paint them as, I was also afraid. I didn't want to do anything lest I be punished too. When they were, there's people that claimed she was doing the same thing just as much as he was. That is kind of like the term. God, I'm so terrible tonight. It's one where it's kind of like the saying, like, a sin of omission. Where
right.
It's that same type of thing. It's just, because you don't say anything, you're just culpable.
Right.
You turned your back while this was occurring. You didn't stop it, so you do have some involvement in this, and that's some of the sources were claiming they felt like this was some of the motivation why she didn't immediately come out. It was like later on down the road. It's like, no, and that was a feel. But for me, I've always said like this: there's a difference between instructional discipline and abuse. I mean, if you're drawing blood, if you're leaving, huge marks and stuff, that's not correction. That's you're being abusive.
Right.
And so I think that's what I personally believe that that several of those cases were legit, based off the research I've done.
Yeah. Someone's gonna leave and check in with Biden's press conference. I knew we were gonna have some.
We're gonna float in and out,
because that's like watching pro wrestling, I think, right now. So anyway, what's your so it seemed like they were stockpiling weapons. They had assault weapons. They were conducting paramilitary training. I think that follows very much with this apocalyptic thing. He very much, will get into this, but he portrayed the ATF and the FBI and all these people that descended for 51 days on Mount Carmel Center, sieged it, were the army of Babylon.
Yeah, this is kind of, we're gonna see this as we progress in these shows. This is one of the fundamental things of, especially like the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment does not put a limit on what is considered a stockpile. One person having 10,000 rounds of ammunition and a bunch of guns is a collector, but to other people, that's a disaster waiting to happen. That's as a stockpile for war. And there's never been a clear delineation for people on what, because it doesn't spell it out. It doesn't say only, U.S. citizen may only possess this at any given time. So that's, and just, like Cisco said there, shall not be infringed. So on that side for the thing, for them to say they're stockpiling weapons, that's somebody just making a case for, prescribing something in the future. I mean, hindsight, okay, they were, you see the stuff in the hindsight, yes, they were doing something, but does that justify what they did at the time of declaring this and coming after it? That's a discussion. I mean, we're going to talk about the Vegas, it's the same type of thing. Yeah. It is, as we progress in saying, we're going to see these things, because that was the biggest thing for me is, one, okay, you've got 100 or so people there, and they're saying you're stockpiling weapons. Well, if you're a group that feels like you need to defend yourself, be off, you're kind of wanting to be kind of like off the grid, what you're going to want to be supplied.
Yeah.
And so that's that. To me, I think that's always going to be the debate: is one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Is how it always goes.
That's absolutely right. So the ATF comes, right? Alcohol, firearms, and tobacco. They commit tobacco and firearms rather, and they attempt to execute a search warrant. So they want to see what's up in the place. So this is a little different than Weaver. It's not an outstanding warrant. There's nothing like that. He hasn't written any kind of manifestos. There have been no threats. They get wind of this thing that they're there, that they're stockpiling, they're training. They got this compound. So this is February 28th, 1993, and it leads to a shootout. So now it's game on, right? So 4 ATF agents and 6 Branch Davidians are killed, including 4 Branch Davidians in the underground tunnels beneath the compound, where there was starting to be some infiltration. So we already have, right at the onset, try to execute a search warrant, and we got 10 dead people.
Yep.
And then we get into a 51-day standoff. And I've been thinking about that all week. 51 days this went on. This would not happen in America today. That's the good news.
Yeah,
nobody would stand for that.
No, it's especially to this level. I mean, to a point, one of the Fun Day standoffs, the one that happened in Southern Oregon, was kind of like this. They were in this compound, but it wasn't to this castle times thing where you've surrounded the castle with the moat. You've got everything. You're not letting food or supplies into the place. You're basically trying to starve the people out.
Yeah.
And that's, I think I agree. It's like, I don't think in today's 24-hour news cycle that this could, would even come close to occurring like this. You'd have so many people, the bad press, you'd have the administration like Bill Clinton. He would have probably had a whole different, basically rules of engagement on this one.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
Yeah.
And please, folks, keep in mind that the Ruby Ridge, speaking of rules of engagement, that trial is happening as they move into April. Now, another really interesting thing, and I think incredibly unfortunate that it happened. Siege began on March 1st. 11 days later, the devil in the blue dress, as you call her, Janet Reno, takes office as Attorney General of the United States. Now, Clinton had been looking to make this appointment, and the 2 women before Reno, both of them were Congress wouldn't confirm them because they had illegal nannies. Both of them.
Yep.
Both the women. But Clinton was really, his whole big thing was, I want a cabinet that looks like, I want a White House that looks like America. So he was determined to have a woman in the position. She had a record in California, some wins, some losses. Some people were happy with her. Some people weren't. She was tough on drugs. She was tough on child abuse and child trafficking, things like that. There are a couple of other things that were questionable, but she gets right. So this is a worst case scenario to me. Clinton didn't want her initially because she had no federal law enforcement experience. It was all state level. And he kind of came around. So people like Hunter S. Thompson have asked the question, why her? Did she have something on him? Whatever. Maybe we don't know. But 2 weeks almost into this siege, she takes office, Craig. And I think that her newbiness, her lack of experience, and maybe some other factors led to the actual outcome. That's my position, as we'll talk about, that she was rolled over.
Well, I can make that, because you can see this is when she utters her infamous line, "They're beating babies."
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and so you can see that there. Yeah, so you could see that there was an emotional side, which is kind of, in a way, is a little rare for a politician and somebody in a cabinet thing. They usually are more reserved in their public statements, especially somebody that's in Attorney General. Lawyer, they typically don't get that emotional side and throw just candid comments out there. So for this to one shows that there was something had happened that was personal to her. And that's when she's directing this thing. And obviously Bill Clinton, he's trying to stay as far back as he can, because you're watching this thing. This is the infancy of, cable news type thing. And you're watching this thing starting to go out of control.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I agree with you. And like I said, she had this history of, child trafficking and child abuse that she had prosecuted. It triggered her. And even, I guess it was 2 years later or whatever, there was another round of investigations, and her language is still very emotional. We'll get to that. So what is going on? The siege tactics, psychological warfare, loud noises, bright lights. They shut off the electricity, try to force a surrender. I also read, Craig, that the agents were mooning and giving the finger to the people inside the compound. That's inexcusable. That's childish. That's Guantanamo Bay bullshit.
Yeah, well, it's almost a continuation, because you see what happened at Ruby Ridge. What did you have for breakfast, Vicky?
Right.
Did you get any sleep, Vicky? It's just so you can see that there's either a lack of control, or this is starting to do a pattern of intention.
Yeah.
That this is, like you said, the Guantanamo Bay. Like, there's this aspect of a thing where, hey, we're going to do what we need to do, but you got to let us take the gloves off, and we're going to get dirty.
Yeah.
And that seems to be, they're like, make it happen. And they went in and they're starting to do this stuff. Because you can't tell me that the FBI, ATF, that this is a standard operating procedure. Drop the pants and flip off the person that you're surveilling.
No. And they're not running the show either. That's when it became a sinister mystery for me. The FBI is using, at the time, top secret U.S. Air Force jamming devices to shut off access to television, to really kind of isolate them. And there's going to be more with the military. I was shocked, dude. The military's imprints are all over this thing, in very substantial ways. So you want to get into the negotiations a little bit, because they're odd. I found them odd.
Go for it.
Okay. So you mentioned Isaiah 26, right? The fifth seal, a very strong city. Salvation will guard our plentiful walls and bulwarks. Well, let me give you guys the numbers on this, because it's kind of astonishing. Over the course of the 51 days, law enforcement negotiators, FBI and ATF, primarily FBI, a man named Byron Sage, he was head of a 5-member team. They had 949 separate conversations with Koresh or his lieutenants, such as, I believe his name was Steve Schneider. Yeah, Steve Schneider was Koresh's top aide. 215 hours of conversations. Sometimes Koresh would be barely alive, and it was not barely alive. I'm sorry, Freudian slip, barely awake, and would be giving Bible study classes and having these weird philosophical conversations with these guys and talking about his childhood and where he might have gone off the tracks. It's really, maybe someday I'll want to listen to those tapes if you can get access to them. Then Steve Schneider, who's Koresh's top aide and spokesperson, he tells the FBI, look, I'm a patriot. I love my country. I have been loyal, but we have gone off the tracks, folks, and we are decaying. And he seems like a very genuine guy who really kind of believe, like I think a lot of folks, Craig, who join these militias, so on and so forth, and I've studied this quite a bit, they are patriots who feel like their country has let them down. They're veterans.
Yeah.
Like, are we going to do the Oklahoma City bombing? I believe that we are at some point.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I think that's coming up.
Yeah, and those guys, they were veterans and felt like they had been lied to and their country let them down. So Steve Schneider also claimed, which is interesting since we're the purveyors of sinister mysteries, that an admiral in the United States Navy had told him about the Rockefellers, the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations. And you and I, we talk about this. We are not radicalized, but we are aware that there are serious problems and that who's running the government probably isn't running the government, and so on and so forth. So it's matters of degree. I'll just say that. It's matters of degree. And I think how much your life has let you down. how much you've been lied to. 2 times I almost went in the United States Navy, and both times it just wasn't meant to be at the time. But I think if I would have gone in and gone through the same process that I've gone through the past 20, 25 years, it probably would have pushed me a little further. You know how I feel about my dad being exposed to Agent Orange.
Oh yeah.
And the lies.
That's really touchy one.
Yeah, so 949 conversations with Koresh and his lieutenants lasting 215 hours. Now we get to April 14th. This is the linchpin for me, dude. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
You want to take it?
No, I'm enjoying this. No,
you sure?
Stay on a roll. Yeah, stay on a roll. Yeah, stay on a roll. This is good stuff.
So check this out. The negotiators have worked out a surrender. Here are the details. One Branch Davidian will leave the compound every one by one. They're going to exit one by one, so there's no confusion, over the course of 2 weeks while David Koresh is finishing writing his Seven Seals letter, his manifesto, his message, the thing that he wants to get out. Now, Janet Reno comes back and says, look, he wanted us to put some of this crap on the radio. We put it on the radio. He was a liar. We did it. What? Why do you, sorry, get a little wound up. Why do you go through working out the terms of a negotiation and then turn around and go, well, we didn't honor the terms of the negotiation because we knew he wasn't going to follow them? That's insanity.
Yeah, part like saying too, for me, it was one of the things where, even that they would, like the negotiation is like, we're going to do this while we let you continue to formulate your doctrine. That was the one that was a weird, negotiating thing that did for me too. But yeah, it was just the staggered release. I was just, for somebody, the thing is just, it was weird that David would agree to that too. That just, here's these things, because these weren't hostages. I mean, they were hostages to the federal government that were locked in this thing, but David wasn't keeping them there against their will.
Right.
And so, yeah, that part really stuck out to me too, is when it's like, it was really weird. And I almost wonder if it was due to this psychological warfare that was going on, the lights, the sounds and stuff. You're basically, it's going to just make lack of sleep and everything. People are just going to start going nuts.
Yeah. I think that was happening. And I think Steve Schneider was trying to manage a situation. If I had to guess, I don't know this for sure, but I think that's what's going on. David is so wrapped up in he wants to get these seals out, but then Schneider is telling the negotiators, no, I haven't seen any pages. He's not really doing it. So I think Koresh was starting to push in on him. What happens on that same day, though, and I'm all about patterns and parallels. So April 14th, the negotiators work out the deal. At the same time, or on the same day, top-ranking Army officers are meeting with Reno to discuss the use of tear gas. Yeah. So this is what I'm saying. Reno comes in, the appointment is delayed, she's at least third on the list, and she's in this position, and the military just come in and probably go, lady, you don't know what the hell you're doing, so we're going to run this thing sort of from the shadows. And then 5 days later, we have the assault. But guys, thank to Woo Rider, Biden just said, I wouldn't have had Vice President Trump run with me if I didn't think she could also be president. Yeah, so I'm glad we're giving you live updates.
Yeah, he's really having trouble keeping thoughts straight.
Yeah, Zelensky, Putin, that's a tough one. And Trump, Harris, that is a tough one. Yeah, Joe, OMG. That's right. And that's what I said to Tanya. When he said the other day, like, I was proud to serve as the first Black vice president with the first Black president, be the first female vice president with the first Black president. Yeah. You're skewing timelines.
Yeah, skewing time. He's just having trouble keeping things together. I mean, it's like, because just in fairness, I know what he was trying to say is that I served under the first as vice president to the first Black president, and the first woman Black vice president is, is like that's what he's trying to say. But it's just the way he comes out is basically he's claiming that he's the first Black vice woman vice president, and it's just you're like, this is not good. This man has nuclear codes.
No, and right.
Like,
I mean that's the thing, right? But
yeah,
so,
it's just
so
like
we
you
continue
can't keep
on.
this straight. It's like
No, we continue on. And guys, we really appreciate the updates while we're doing this thing here. Yeah, Joe says, I think he's succumbing to the pressures of the moment. The time, right? That sundowning is a real thing. If he really does have dementia, this is the worst damn time of the day for him to be in front of people. So they're not helping him. So, but let's continue with this. So 5 days later is the FBI assault. And here's where it really becomes he said, and all this kind of stuff. They use tear gas. Fire breaks out in the compound. Compound sets on fire, set on fire, leading to the deaths of 76 Branch Davidians, including David Koresh. This is a high body count. And again, today, this would, 9 members from the compound survive. So the big he said, or the big dispute is who the hell started the fire. So the original narrative, right, was that the Branch Davidians started the fire, that they set themselves on fire, that they burned the place down. But over time, it came out that the specific incendiary device, and it took years for this to happen, that the specific incendiary devices that they use do burn. They do have a burn ignition to them. It's very possible that is what the hell happened. And now, Craig, unless I missed something, we're into the aftermath.
Yeah, because that was one of the things that they broke down. Because there was supposedly the audio that was recorded of them declaring, move the fuel around, they were doing. But there's also the people that claim, well, no, they're talking about like lantern fuel. They're talking about stuff like, making sure these things, because they're worried about it being in one location. Like if something happened, you have a fire. Well, it's kind of one of those things. Were they spreading it because they were going to start the fire, or was it one that they were doing? So I did come across that.
Yeah.
It's kind of where I mentioned, like I said, where they're looking for a spark. For me, still the part that was one of the weirdest things is why the initial raid was happened.
Yeah.
Because they're really, looking back, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't really remember anything that would be considered, we must get in there right now. Like I said, stockpiling weapons, that's not a crime.
Yeah.
It's not a crime. Like right now, I could go buy 25 ARs, 15 rifles. I could have all the stuff in the house. It's legal to have. But to a lot of people, they'd be like, oh my God, what is he stockpiling for? Is he getting ready to do something? That doesn't then justify the ATF knocking down my door and raiding the thing. And if I I was to return fire to the person that just kicked down, knocked down my door. Well, now that's how we have this thing. Well, you basically created the spark, which now has warranted this standoff. So I keep boiling it down to, was there something that they, was there a plan to hopefully create an incident like this? Did they want, was there some element of them that wanted this to occur to further, because like I said, we just got done with Ruby Ridge, and obviously they didn't learn anything. It's like, if anything, they doubled down.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
sir.
No.
Let's unpack some of the aftermath, and maybe it'll help us illuminate some of these questions, because maybe some of this data. So what happens from this, I think, is very interesting. Alex Jones, who everybody knows, the frogs are, right? They're taking the guns. They're coming to the guns.
Chemicals are turning the frogs gay.
Yeah. Alex Jones is a teenager at the time. He's already into conspiracy theories. He's already doing his thing. He already, wants to go on the radio and this and that, but he comes radicalized by what he saw. He watches it. And then years later, he wanted to rebuild the compound as a memorial and make it a far-right Alamo. So here's the guy who was further radicalized by this. April 30th, so 11 days, in just a strange coincidence, and the universe has a sense of humor, Tim Berners-Lee, the computer scientist, releases the source code for the first ever web browser, which he called Mesh. And this was a way for people to communicate. This was a primitive way for people to search out information about this. What happens? within a year, the first major militia group appears in Michigan. And just a few years later, there are militias in every state, 250,000 members. As a direct result of Ruby Ridge and Waco, which is, I think, not to speak for you, but probably why you wanted to talk about this thing that happened 30 years ago, because it set dominoes in motion. Far from sending a message like the government will squash you, so you better not, and nobody did. 250,000 people did. They said, "Oh, this is BS, and you're not taking away my rights." So this is major. What this causes.
It's kind of the Bubba effect, and it's one of those things where I think probably because a lot of these things that happen, you could see they want something to, they always have who's they, but you could see that the people that are calling the shots, they want somebody to do some, to go just enough to where they can do the crackdown. I think with those militias, they formed, you get all these things there, but nobody ever went that next step. These groups didn't start attacking, because one of the things, I don't know if anybody, the Weather Underground, Bill Ayers, Bernardine Dort, they actually bombed, stations, they actually did these. That's, I think, what they were hoping that these militias were going to do, that they'd start going after like government centers, going after courthouse, going to these things, and then it would give them a reason to even further crack down. But people they gelled as groups, but they never attacked. They just basically prepared. And I think they're hoping for that next step that never occurred. And I think that's why they keep trying to test the next one, next one and next one and next one, just hoping that finally that effect will kick in. And that's why there's always been the calm, that like people have always thought it's like, the whole, don't, Bundy standoff, nobody actually pulled the trigger. Had they pulled a trigger, thing would have exploded.
Yep. Well, they did get their way with the federal building in Oklahoma City.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the thesis, and I'm not going to push back. I'm not going to push back.
No, and I think that's what it was. Is they finally got somebody, and that was one of those things. Is like, and realistic, like the Oklahoma City bombing. This now sets up the case for the Patriot Act.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the things where you see where this effect, now it's given them the thing. Now we must step, unfortunately, we hate to do this, but we've got to for the safety and security. And, everybody should know the Benjamin Franklin quote by now. Anybody willing to, give up, their security, their freedoms for security will, just like I said, you go through the thing and it's over and over and over and over. I don't know. I mean, because go back to that same thing with just the ATF, because there's the debate who fired first. I mean, there's still a lot of things that say, and this going based off of Ruby Ridge, I almost believe that the ATF was the first one to fire a shot.
Well, I think it was actually the FBI snipers attached.
To I think somebody. I bet you it was one of those things. He popped, and then it was just enough to where, just like the Sammy Weaver, they fired back, and then it just in the heat of the bout, everybody started going anything, and then once the dust clears, now the feds are like, well, we can't just walk away. And that's where, we have. So now that leads to, like Janet Reno, they're beating children. Well, they're beating children. Well, at least 23 or so of those children that were possibly being beaten are dead now.
Yeah, exactly right. It's exactly right. So the congressional hearings come along, and their position is that the Branch Davidians started the fire. That's their position. But luckily, thankfully, it didn't end there. Because August 27th, 1999, so this is 3 years later, more than 3 years later, Washington Post front page news. A visibly angry, this is a quote from the Washington Post, front page. A visibly angry Attorney General Janet Reno said that she was assured by the FBI that no incendiary devices were used. The FBI countered with a very limited number of potentially incendiary tear gas cartridges is what we actually said, Madam AG. And the quote is that Rena was very, very troubled and very, very upset. And that goes back, Craig. This is 6 years later to what you were talking. There's a level of emotionality there that's probably inappropriate to go very, very this, and I'm very, very that. And they were really trying to cover their asses at this.
Yeah, because you could tell, because most people, I've said this to a lot of people, anytime you make decisions out of emotion, you're almost always going to make the wrong choice when it's emotional. And so you could see she was doing this stuff. She was just like, like I said, she had a soft spot for the kids, for all this stuff, like, the abuse side. So she's wanting to stop here, but you're looking at the same thing. One, this is the time we don't know where people are, and you're rushing a tank, you're knocking down walls, you're going to these things. You can't tell me that the safety and security of the kids was your first priority.
Yeah.
You're firing tear gas blindly into the place. You're knocking down walls. You're doing all these things that clearly are putting the kids I'm worried about in massive danger.
Yeah.
And by all indications, like I said, prior to this whole thing, there was nobody that was in a life or death situation other than possible child abuse, which is a serious thing. That if this is the case, there's ways to handle this.
Yeah,
and it's
we're not talking about social services.
Yeah, we're not talking. This isn't the level of an ATF raid. I mean, this is. I mean, yeah, you have a social worker go there, and if something happens to a social worker, then all of a sudden, all right, now we have to have a police presence. Right. But those steps never seem to have occurred. It just seems to have gone from 0 to 60. Like all of a sudden, you've got agents basically doing a no announced knock on the door, try to come in, and a shootout happens.
Yeah. I have 3 or 4 sinister mystery talking points, I guess you could call them. She denied that weapons were fired initially. Then a video came out clearly showing weapons being fired. So she had egg on her face. And I think that was driving a lot of her anger. And suddenly it's like, no, I'm not trying to cover up the truth. I am heavily, heavily committed to delivering you the truth. And we have to remember that, and I was talking about this with that journalist interview that I did earlier today. Clinton was the Truth and Reconciliation guy. We apologize for this. We apologize for that. So that was his play. September 13th of 1993, so a couple months later, Charles Riley, an FBI sniper deployed with Lon Horiuchi. Lon Horiuchi is the one that wounded Weaver's friend and killed Weaver's wife while she was holding her, 10-month-old?
Yeah, 10-month-old daughter.
Yeah. So Lon Horiuchi pops up again. He's back on the scene now months later. And Riley, a fellow FBI sniper, claims that he heard Horiuchi shooting from sniper position 1. So this was a house. It was called Sierra 1, and there were 8 snipers in there. But Horiuchi was the one who fired. Very interestingly, the Texas Rangers investigated that house. So they got involved on the state level. The Texas Rangers went in. They found that 12 .308 caliber casings had been expended, or they found the casings, and 3 of the 12 were in Horiuchi's position. So this frigging guy was front and center on both of these things. Ruby Ridge and as you point out, Randy Weaver got pretty militant when it came to Lon Horiuchi. You want to tell the audience about that?
Oh yeah, that was the I'd have to bring stuff, but yeah, he got to the point to where he was sending him letters. He was sent, he was full on press, like he was going after this guy. He was it was in a basic. I mean, as in a way most people would expect somebody to do. It became his obsession is to out this guy and to show what the problems with things. Because I mean, it was just he was handing out. I think I'm trying to look at all the stuff he was handing out. I could
pull that up, Craig? I know that was his position. Of course, his position was this guy murdered my wife and could have killed my 10-month-old. Who was the one who was calling for his assassination and death? Was that also Randy?
Yeah, I think that was. Believe that was him.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's.
Well, you're looking for that.
Yeah.
there is this rumor, and this really flabbergasted me, that the Army's secret anti-terrorist Delta Force was there. The Pentagon's position to this day is that all military personnel were lawfully deployed and acted only as observers and advisors. To follow on that, the Department of Defense then came out and they acknowledged that they were providing equipment and personnel to both the ATF in the official raid and to the FBI's hostage rescue team in the final assault. And they were also training personnel in the use of 40-millimeter grenade launchers. So the military is all over this thing. And I think somehow, Craig, if I had to guess, that April 14th, that while they're finalizing the negotiations, top-level military advisors are meeting with Janet Reno. The top military advisors got their way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, it's, God, I know I say this and I can't find it. I'd save this for this one, for the sake, because I want to talk about it. I can't find it.
That's okay.
Can't find it now.
And Joe and I had a conversation. He said the SAS was reported as being there too. I did not find that in my research. But that doesn't mean that they weren't. I mean, there's only so much, But that's what I have on this, Craig.
Yeah, I'm trying to find this here, people.
He was speaking at gun shows.
He was going through that thing, and
he wrote a couple of books.
If I find it, I will. Yeah,
you can forgive the guy for having it out for Lon Horiuchi, and then for him to actually be there is just crazy. I want to address this with what Joe was asking. The SAS is the Special Air Service, an elite British military unit. That would seem odd that we would call in the Brits on this situation.
Yeah, the only thing I could see it would be in the connected thing where, this is leading up to this, to the basically. God, my brain is fried today. I don't know what's going on. It's this. You have the intelligence agencies where all those ones. Come on, somebody help me out, please. Bail me out here. Five Eyes. Yeah, it's like we're kind of leading up into this thing, like this is the infancy of it. So I would not be surprised if something like the SA was MI5. These type of things weren't in some way, working together, like logistics, and because it'd be one of those things, just like what happened down in South America. They're using this stuff as training, as for to learn from. So it wouldn't be. As Joseph said, I wouldn't be surprised. It wouldn't shock me if something came down and like, oh yeah, these people were sitting back, kind of like as an advisor, like hey, right. Try. We've learned this technique works. See if it works here.
Yeah. But we did. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying. But would I think that you'd have like a British troops on the ground doing stuff like that? No, I don't think that they would have been involved like in the actual conflict. But I wouldn't be surprised if they were in like a ready room type thing, advising.
So Joe, I'll put this up on the screen here. It's an article from 2011, a guy named Ray O'Hanlon. Inside file, SAS at Waco 2, Irish Echo. Probably as advisors or, we did Operation Condor. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. So it gets stickier and stickier and messier and messier.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, I think. It just when it just boils down to me, it's always just even though there's a lot, you could see the reasons why it would happen, but there's always it's like those sticking points, like you just said, that. Why did it have to go this far? Like the Randy Weaver thing. Why did it have to go this far? Right. David Corrett in the Branch Davidians. Why did it have to get to this point? you already had him arrested. So it's not like this guy's untouchable, that you can't ever get your hands on this guy. So obviously it's not like they're in this impenetrable fortress that the only way you can attack this is through a military incursion. You've had him arrested before. He's, they're routinely out in public. They're not secluded. So there's, if you needed to pick this guy up for potential child abuse, just wait till the next time he's going, he's in town. Scoop him up.
Yeah.
And do the charges there. I go, it's just, for me, this is the thing. It just keeps leading as to things. It's almost like it was something that was intended. They wanted the confrontation, and they were hoping he would do is exactly what they thought he would do. He would snap, and it would lead to, something to where they would have to crack down. That's right. The only thing I keep going to is that.
Yeah.
And Nick, that's awesome. It's cool that you hadn't heard.
Hey, Nick.
You hadn't heard about. Yeah, this is something.
Yeah. So Joe, this is what the deal is, Craig. So I think we were right. It's interesting. 2 members of the SAS, they were training at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, or visiting, right? So they were engaging in something at Fort Bragg there, and there's some real elite units at Fort Bragg.
Visiting.
Yeah, right. Visiting, right? It's a colloquialism, right? Visiting Fort Bragg, where the elite group is. Weird synchronicity, Joe Red Miles. I was watching the Musings of a Smoking Man X-Files last night, and that's where he was stationed as a captain, was at Fort Bragg with an elite team. So that's interesting. Anyway, they ask as a courtesy if they can go to Waco. So this story got out, and Senator Charles Robb of Virginia was asked about it, and he said, yeah, they were there. The SAS had a long-standing relationship with the FBI's hostage rescue team. So there you go, Craig. We were right. It's this cross-training amongst the Five Eyes and Cooperative, and you got an incident going on here with the siege. We could learn from that. You mind if we leave North Carolina and go to Texas? No, come on over. And they kind of had a relationship with the Hostage Rescue team, which I'm really going to have to look into them, because you go elite hostage rescue team, you think like negotiators, and no. These are guys who are going to figure a way to go in, kill the bad guys, and bring the good guys out.
It's almost that, they're negotiating a shoot first, and then as the guy's falling over, shout your question out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, hey, we did it, and we did it a little more than an hour. I want to look at my book here. We got July 25th. We're coming back with the Oklahoma City bombing, because Timothy McVeigh and his partner there, whose name always escapes me, because he gets all the press, was pretty radicalized by what happened at Ruby Ridge and at Waco, and it's a direct line. So we're going to talk about that, and I have lots and lots of friends in Tulsa. It's not far away from Oklahoma City. They still talk about it. They had a domestic terrorist incident at a hospital in Tulsa, and it brought all the wounds back. That was last year. We're going to do this, Craig, like we do everything. We're going to do it with respect. We're going to stick to the facts, try to extrapolate some meaning, because this was just a domino that has built.
And it's built. Like I was saying earlier, you can start seeing a pattern of where it's almost like they keep pushing, trying to see if they can just keep ramping it up. And once again, the Oklahoma City bombing, and we'll cover this thing, it's an escalation, a major escalation. Now we've blown up a building, we've done some stuff here, but it's only it's only a small number of actors. This isn't the widespread thing. And it's almost like they're frustrated. We can't seem to get these guys to go. It's like, we can only, you can't, nobody's going to settle. The only reason, like I said, we have what we have right now from 9/11 is because Patriot Act is because of 9/11. It was such a major thing. It was like, okay, we can do this. We can roll this thing out. Everybody welcome this stuff in. Nobody's welcoming a life, like none of us would accept the fact we couldn't rent a U-Haul or Ryder truck because of these 2 at Oklahoma City bombing. They can't do that. They can't restrict these things because nobody would accept it. Now, if there was 35, 40 of these things all throughout the US all at the same time, then it would be like, we need to have a registry, make sure who's renting these things. And people would be like, oh yeah, we need to know, and they would go through, they'd have restrictions on all these materials. But because only these two, these guys were the only ones involved, you can't have a mass crackdown. Now you just have the investigations of finding, what happened, who's radicalizing these things. It's not what they wanted. And it's sad that you have to say that, but you can see there's obviously Lon Horiuchi. There's these ones that are in these things that seem to be, for lack of a better term, sorry, they have a hard on for action. They want to pull the trigger. They want this mayhem. And the only way to do this is to keep provoking.
Yeah. Well, you don't become an elite sniper and not want to fire your weapon.
Yeah.
And prove there is this pattern among elite snipers that there's some ego, there's some lying, there's things that come out. Yeah, so we're gonna, and we'll find out in 2 weeks, Craig, when I go back. But I think I remember somewhere along the line that there was a question if there were only 2 actors with Oklahoma City. So we'll see what we uncover with all of that. We got some good stuff coming up, guys. We're gonna do the Unabomber. Look at what a manifesto kind of looks at. Look at what pattern, what people get driven to. Because you're right, Craig. I mean, Southern Law Poverty Center 10, 12 years ago, I was supporting them financially and helping out in other ways and things like that. And they started to go after these domestic terrorists. And you remember there was this one group where they arrested like this 92-year-old dude. Yeah, because he was like this massive threat. And so it has been a pushed narrative, and we don't have it on the calendar yet. And data is still coming in, so it's good to wait on it. But we're going to do January 6th.
Yep. Yeah, because it's one, as you're going to get the people like, oh my God. I'm like, no. We're going to do just like we did in every show. We're only going to deal with the facts. I don't care. I'm like, I'm not going to call some guy that's just standing there listening to the thing, an insurrectionist. I'm not going to call them a freedom fighter, I said, that's not what we're going to be talking about what happened, who said what, who was doing where, and you deal with the facts. We're going to talk to the facts. It's like, you can't keep saying that these people are a danger and then ignore the fact that a Capitol police officer are removing barricades, letting the people walk right in, or showing the guy in handcuffs walking through on security footage, get uncuffed, pat on the back, and he continues on. Well, obviously, this can't be this absolute danger that must be stopped at all costs. This would lead the question of what we've said in these last few shows. The theys. What is the agenda? Because obviously, these were people that were put in there for a reason. And it's like, so were they there to stoke the flames, try to get it to where it's the need for the correct? Because like I said, this is going to be a theme. As we see in these ones, you're seeing this seems to be this incessant need for it to get out of control, but it never seems to get enough for them to be able to do that. You can see this frustration. It's like we want to.
Yeah. Yeah, so good shows coming up, folks, to take you through the summer. And then I have a feeling, in the fall, Craig, we're going to do Project 2025. We're going to we're not going to be partisan. We know that who's running is above the two-party system, certainly who's running the show. So we're not going to come out. We're not going to endorse any candidates. But as things come up, Project 2025 is in the news a lot now. It has its origins and its contents and its potential uses are fairly sinister. So we'll try to unpack some of that and introduce you to the players and all. So thank you, my colleague, as always, episode 41. Can't wait till we get to 141, if you know what I mean.
I know. That is, and hopefully if I can get all the pieces right, we'll have an intro.
Yes. Yeah. Well, now that you said it, we'll say it. We're working on it, guys. There's parts and pieces. We've hired a composer who's waiting in the wings. Craig's getting together the video aspects, and Sinister Mysteries is going to be its own. Nothing's going to change except it won't be episode blah 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 of Into the Outer Realms. And yes, watch Earth Radio or listen to Earth Radio. It's radio only, terrestrial radio.
Mixler.com. Go set up your account.
At 10 p.m. You can hear the show
Mixler.com.
audio only.
Follow Earth Radio.
Nick, thanks for joining us, my buddy from New Zealand. So got an international audience. Is very cool.
Oh, well, that would be possibly why he may not have heard about Waco. I was thinking it's like if he was here in the States, I was like, man, I figure most people have heard of the Waco Siege, Dave Koresh, but
no,
across
very
the bodies of water there,
and novelist. So thanks for joining
thanks for watching,
brother. And it's pretty late on your end. I'm thinking it's got to be over midnight. So, Joe, thanks for all the work you did and messages back and forth all week about this. Okay, brother, I got to make a meeting on the West Coast, speaking about time differences and it being late and early and all that.
All right, everybody.
So I'm going to go do
that. Good night.
Peace, everyone. It just doesn't want